Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Well, it is Thanksgiving weekend. We're going to talk travel as we discuss BC Ferries and ask you for your experiences. This as BC Ferries faces fines from the province for sailing cancellations due to staffing shortages. Well, let us know what has been your recent experience taking a BC ferry. After 12:30, our pets column is back. How do you protect your dogs from coyote encounters? I'm Michelle Eliot. Welcome to BC Today. Thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1 and live streaming on CBC Gem, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. Well, this Thanksgiving long weekend, it is looking pretty busy for people traveling around the province. And that includes, of course, those traveling via BC Ferries. After a summer full of delays and cancellations, a few passengers may be crossing their fingers today. But there are some changes coming from the province that are meant to address those ongoing issues. BC's Transportation Minister Rob Fleming said this week that the province is working to introduce penalties for missed sailings due to staff shortages. This also comes as the BC Ferry Commission approved a fare price cap for the next 4 years. So that means average fares can increase by a maximum of 3.2% annually starting in April 2024. We're taking your calls on this, asking for your experience taking a BC ferry in the past few months. You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone as well, or email us bctoday@cbc.ca. We want to hear about your experiences, the good, the bad, your tips for making sure it is smooth sailing for you while taking a BC ferry. And what do you think needs to change? For more on this, we have reached Trevor Halford. He's BC United's MLA for Surrey White Rock and the opposition critic for transportation and infrastructure. Trevor, good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Hi there. Good to have you with us. What do you make of the issues that BC Ferries has seen through the last few months?
I'm here.
Hi, can you hear me, Trevor? I think we're having some audio issues with Trevor Halford, the BC United transportation critic. We'll try to reconnect with him as we also take your calls, asking you what has been your experience taking a BC ferry over the last few months. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733 are our phone numbers. And this, of course, as we head into the very busy travel for the long weekend, Thanksgiving weekend, and the sailing cancellations that BC Ferries has faced over the summer months. Due to that, the province has said it's going to introduce fines for canceled sailings due to staff shortages. So for those reasons, it's going to introduce some fines. $7,000 for a missed canceled sailing on a major route, $1,000 for a minor route. Now, between October 5th and October 10th for all routes, BC Ferries will sail 2,900 round trips and anticipates over 380,000 passengers between October 5th and October 10th. So certainly a busy, long weekend ahead, the third busiest travel weekend of the year for BC Ferries. That's behind BC Day and Canada Day. We do have Trevor Halford on the line now. Hi there, Trevor.
Hi, how are you?
I am fine. Thanks so much for joining us. I apologize for the technical issues there.
It's all good.
What are your thoughts on the issues that BC Ferries has been facing, recurrent sailings that have been canceled over the summer months, either due to mechanical issues or staff shortages?
Yeah, with many British Columbians that depend on the ferry service, and I'm one of them, extreme frustration, and obviously frustrated with the lack of reliability, but also very frustrated with the lack of transparency. And we're seeing that again. And just the judgment that is seeming to come out of the NDP government and BC Ferries is not making a lot of sense right now. And there's a couple of examples that have happened in the last 48 hours that I'm sure you guys are well aware of.
Okay. What are those examples that you say are poor judgment?
Well, you talked about the imposing the fine. and I think I believe it's $7,000 for major routes.
That's right.
$1,000 for minor routes. Okay, so imagine this. Imagine that you pull up BC Ferries to get to a doctor's appointment, and you're going from Tsawwassen to Swartz Bay, and that ferry is canceled. You miss your doctor's appointment. You're relying on getting the next ferry or turning around and going home. A $7,000 fine does what for you in terms of that missed appointment? You are basically, here's what the reality is. The $7,000 fine is basically being imposed on the person that's missed the ferries, because BC Ferries is subsidized by the provincial government. So in essence, they're fining themselves, which means they're fining the taxpayers. I don't understand the rash. I think this is more of a show than anything. It's more of a political stunt. But at the end of the day, this does not help the people that are depending on using those ferries.
The Transportation Minister, Rob Fleming, was on CBC yesterday and explained the rationale behind, from his perspective, behind those penalties, those fines. As you said, $7,000 for the major routes. He said that is essentially the cost saving that Ferries acquires through not using fuel for that sailing. And so his question was, why should BC Ferries be saving as a result of a canceled sailing? And so that money should go back into the taxpayer, as you've been talking about. What do you think of that?
Well, it's a bit of a smokescreen. Like you're going to fine BC Ferries, which you're subsidizing, and then what are you doing with that after? Is it going into general revenue? Where is it going? What are you doing with the $7,000 once you get it? Listen, BC Ferries does not want to. I'm very sure that BC Ferries does not enjoy canceling sailings. So that's the other question I have too. Is that if the minister and the premier think that this is an incentive to not cancel ferries, we've got a way bigger issue. Right? Because BC Ferries doesn't cancel a sailing because they don't feel like sailing that day. They cancel it one of two reasons, or three, I guess, weather, which everybody understands. Mm-hmm. The second is the safety of the boat if there's a mechanical issue, which happens quite often now, more often than not. And then the third thing, which happens quite frequently, is due to crew shortages. Do you think that they are all of a sudden, because of a $7,000 fine, that is going to change where things are at right now? Like I said, it makes little to no sense to me, and the minister can spin this any way he wants. But at the end of the day, this is him trying to look like they're doing something when they've had ample opportunity to fix what I would call a very horrific summer for BC Ferries.
Trevor Halford is with me, BC United's MLA for Surrey White Rock and the opposition critic for transportation and infrastructure. And so as we embark on this long Thanksgiving weekend, a very busy one, the third busiest weekend for BC Ferries, and having faced those recurring cancellations over the year due to those issues and reasons that Trevor Halford has been going through. What has been your own experience, and what do you think are the solutions that will make a difference? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 as well, or you can email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. And Steve is joining us from Horton Bay. And Steve, you're a regular ferry user.
Yes, I am. First of all, I want to say that your previous caller was very articulate in his arguments, and I agree with him across the board. The whole smokescreen and politicalization of this is probably what is most at play with the 7,000. I do want to say that my interaction with all the staff BC Ferry staff, from reservations people to people on the ground on terminals, is excellent. A great bunch of people trying to do their best, to make things work. I do find that the breakdown issue is a problem that dates way back with lack of investment or appropriate investment or taking care of the fleet. That's a government issue. And the missed ferries due to staffing, that's being registered across the board. I know people with restaurants and all kinds of businesses that are carrying many times more the number of staff that they should, because people don't show up for work. And these days, a lot of people don't phone to say they're not going to show up for work. So whether that's a COVID fallout or whether that's just a sign of the times, that's HR is probably something that BC Ferries could spend more money on, I guess.
Is
But
it? I've heard
bigger.
of things like sick calls. There was one where there was an emergency, and so the ferry sailing was canceled that day.
Yeah, I hear that. Then maybe it's potentially something that BC Ferries could consider running slightly overstaff. So maybe scheduling an extra couple of bodies on board to give you the buffer in case somebody doesn't show up. I'm not quite sure how that all works. But the staffing issue is not just BC Ferries. It's an industry. It's everywhere. So,
Right. That's true. Yeah. Steve, thank you so much. How often do you take the ferry from Main Island?
Probably a couple of times a week from Maine to Victoria or Schwartz Bay, and also from Maine to Tsawwassen.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as someone who relies on it for sure.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. Thanks so much for the call. Okay. Take care.
No problem. Thank you. Bye.
That's Steve joining us from Horton Bay. And so the challenge of staff shortages, certainly, as he said, that's across all sectors. BC Ferries has said it's hired 1,200 new staff this year. But what can it do further in order to recruit more employees?
Well, listen, Steve's right on number one issue, and I use the ferries. Now that we're in session, I use it every week, and I can tell you that the people that are working those ferries, whether it's in the ticket booth or the people that are serving on there or operating the vessel, they're doing their best, and they're great people, and I've never had a negative experience once. But they're under a ton of pressure, right? And you imagine being in that ticket booth when your sailing gets canceled and you're missing a family event or appointment or work, and that's really, really troubling. And I can't imagine the stress that they're going through right now. So Steve's bang on that. Listen, this isn't a new problem for BC Ferries, and the fact is that the people in management at BC Ferries are doing quite well for themselves. And BC Ferries took it upon themselves to announce yesterday that they've hired 4 new vice presidents. So unless those vice presidents are going to be actually operating the ferries and making sure that we're not missing a sailing due to crew shortages, I think BC Ferries has got their priorities completely backwards right now.
Okay, that is part of the plan, though, to address these issues in the future. Part of that is trying to recruit more staff and also replacing its aging fleet. Is it a matter of just, putting the plan in place to face the future, and there are going to be growing pains in the meantime?
Yeah, listen, for sure. And we know that, retention and keeping staff and getting new staff has been a challenge for BC Ferries, and having these stories in the news doesn't help. And I think that the challenge is, and your caller pointed out, there was canceled sailing because one person had an emergency, and that happens in life, right? That happens in life, but we are talking about something that affects, an entire ship sailing. To get people from where they go, that's over 1,000 people. And so I think that what we're seeing is complete disorganization from BC Ferries and a definite lack of accountability from the minister and the premier. And I'll note that they put out this news release, or they put out the info regarding their executives, and they talk about that they're going to be better positioned and have a robust communication strategy. Yet they're not available for comment. So, like I said, we saw this over the summer unfold, and I think there's some systemic problems at BC Ferries, and this government is not prepared to address it.
Okay, pardon me, who were you saying was not available for comment?
Well, I looked at one of the stories yesterday when it came to the changes they made in their executive ranks there, and they say that the change was by BC Ferries for robust communications department, and then the report was they were not able to respond to requests for comments regarding the change made to its executive team. So you communicate out that you're going to be better in communications, yet you can't answer questions from the media. It tells me that you really haven't taken the step that people are asking you to take.
Okay. We did request BC Ferries CEO Nicholas Jimenez for the program today. He was not available, but we are working on having him on the afternoon show with Gloria Makarenko this afternoon as well, and on the coast. So we'll check in and see if that has been confirmed. Let's go to our callers now. Jim is on the line from Port Moody to talk about the experience of taking a BC ferry. Now, what's it been like for you, Jim?
Hi there. Well, we didn't in the end take a ferry. My spouse and I were planning to go to Hornby Island, and the problem was the reservation system seems to be unworkable. So the place on Hornby Island understandably wanted half of the money paid ahead of time, no refunds within 2 weeks. And the problem was we could not make a reservation. So end of May, June was totally booked. July was booked. We've recently looked at trying to go in October, and October, the month, again, is fully booked. The best we could do is one ferry at 6 in the morning.
So in the end, you didn't book.
Add to that. So I think so. We couldn't book, and I think the problem is that reservations are $5. So it seems that it would be not reasonable, but strategic for someone to maybe make half a dozen bookings and then perhaps choose the ferry they wish to go on.
Okay, sort of like the camping website.
Yeah, something like that.
Those kinds of issues of booking a lot at the same time. It's interesting because what I've heard in the past from callers is that the reservation system, sort of can benefit or creates a two-tier system, and that people who can afford them are able to, ensure that they get a spot on the ferry.
Well, I don't see anything wrong, for example, with charging, I don't know, let's say $30 for a reservation, and then $25 worth of that goes towards your ticket. I'm certainly sympathetic to not penalizing people that are, unable to afford higher rates.
Yeah. But essentially your issue was that there were no spaces. And so
there was no spaces.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we weren't willing to go and line up on the off chance that we couldn't get onto a ferry, and then the chain of other ferries would be, we just weren't confident of being able to get to this place on Hornby in the time we had allocated.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting, Jim. And so, of course, we've all heard about that, right? Being in line for hours and hours. So what do you think might be something the province should look at then? It sounds to me like you're, expanding the fleet or adding more spaces and that kind of thing might be a solution that you would call for.
Well, I mean, it is supposed to be an extension of the highway, so it would be nice if it was treated that way by the province. I mean, perhaps the province having a more hands-on approach to it. And yes, everyone says we need more ferries and more spaces, but that's it's hard to do that also.
Yeah.
The specific problem with reservations, I think that can be addressed. I mean, I think that obviously BC Ferries knows how many reservations aren't being met by people that have made the reservation.
Right.
So it's a smallish issue, but I mean, for people that need a guaranteed spot, it's an important one.
It is an important one. Jim, thank you so much. Really good to hear from you.
Great. Thanks for taking my call.
You take care. Jim in Port Moody. And another caller. Now, before I go to our next caller, we can confirm that BC Ferries CEO Nicholas Jimenez will be on the coast coming up at 4:10 this afternoon, 4:10 Pacific this afternoon. Mohammed is joining us now from Souk. What are your thoughts on ferry service, Mohammed?
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I've worked in large corporations before, and I've seen things that I don't like. One of the issues I have here is that first of all, I don't agree with the fines. I don't think that is a substantive process and incentive to improve performance. What I think needs to be done is that there needs to be bonuses tied to performance. All the executives who get paid bonuses need to have a strong and transparent link between the performance of the fleet and what they get paid. And I just heard about the announcement where they hired one or a few more senior execs. That's not going to solve their problems. They need to address fundamental issues in improving performance. And yes, I understand that staff shortages are an issue across the board in many areas and in industries and businesses. That is a difficult issue, but they need to figure the problem out as far as other problems that they're having and tie incentives to that. That's the only way that they are going to actually improve things, because that's how executives get paid and should get paid their bonuses. If they don't meet performance criteria, they don't get a penny.
Mohammed, thank you very much for the call from Souk. I can see my guest, BC United MLA and opposition critic for transportation, Trevor Halford, nodding as he's listening to Mohammed there. So you talked about the hiring of executives. What about that? Tying bonuses to
Yeah.
performance.
Well, listen. At the end, your last two callers are bang on. I'll tackle the reservation system first. Is that it should not be easier to get a Taylor Swift ticket than get a reservation on BC Ferries, and that's pretty much what we saw over the summer. And your caller's right; it was because of people not showing up and things like that, and also the reservation system was completely unreliable and inaccurate. Up to 12 hours, giving inaccurate information that stranded people overnight because of their incompetence. So what I would say to that is you need to do better. And, one of the challenges is when your last caller is talking about, BC Ferries management and salaries. These are positions that are, the VPs are making upwards towards, I think, $468,000 a year. And in some cases are a little bit higher than that or quite higher than that. And are you prepared to have $7,000 come off your paycheck? Right? Because that's part of the challenge that we're facing right now. And I'll tell you, it's very frustrating to me that when average people are experiencing the delays and the frustration that we're getting, what we see from BC BC Ferries is let's add to the executive team. And you know what, the CEO is going to come on and say, well, it's kind of equivalent to what it was last year. What we want to see is that let's hire
in
people
terms of performance.
Let's see people that can staff the ships, make that the priority. Don't make it a priority to handle and hire more executives. And, I'd be interested to see where these executives have come from and what their salaries are going to be. And I think he should be fully transparent about that when he comes on your show this afternoon.
Okay. Now, a couple of questions there on the reservation system. I mean, how do we know how, to be fair, he was looking at June and July, very busy summer months. October might include this weekend, incredibly busy as well. I mean, are those issues outlying for those very busy times? I don't know if that's harder than getting a Taylor Swift ticket.
No, absolutely not. Now, I appreciate the question, but that's a flat out excuse. Listen, at the end of the day, we know that Canada Day weekend, we know that BC long weekend, BC Day long weekend, and we know that Thanksgiving are the busiest times. Those are in the calendar. We all know that those dates exist. BC Ferries knows that. So this idea that these holidays and long weekends snuck up on us that does not make any sense. And I think at the end of the day, it's just poor planning, poor execution, and they can point fingers all they want. But the blame relies on this NDP government, primarily David Eby and Minister Fleming, for not having proper, I would say, at least some degree of transparency and accountability with BC Ferries. And if you're going to say a $7,000 fine is going to fix that, well, then
isn't that accountability?
A lot smarter than that.
Isn't that accountability to issue penalties?
No, absolutely not, and not in the way that they've done it. Listen, $7,000, you're basically fining yourself at this point, right? And so the person that is in line that has to suffer through a cancellation, what does that mean for them when BC Ferries is fined $7,000? Like I said before, I don't think that BC Ferries enjoys or wants to do cancellations, and a lot of those times, I'm imagining they come at the very last second because they're unable to properly staff the ships. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that this is going to change really the poor performance that we're seeing from BC Ferries and from the government on this file.
And finally, you touched on it. The BC Ferries says the performance is slightly below from last year. Is it a matter of public trust at this point? Just seeing those news stories, repeat news stories, is it a matter of trying to restore public trust?
Yeah, I think that if the CEO, I'm imagining he's a pretty honest person. I think that he would be honest with your listeners and say there is a very high lack of trust and accountability when it comes to BC Ferries. We've seen that. We've seen when you have seniors having to sleep in their car because of an unreliable ferry system. I think that we've got some severe problems on our hands, and it's embarrassing. And so, what we're seeing now is, a lack of accountability and a lack of transparency. And if they think that they can address those issues by adding more executives and vice presidents, We see how that works for the health authorities. So I imagine that we are going to be, and to then say that you've got now a robust communications department, that's not going to get a sailing done on time.
I'm just going to put one last email to you here as a BC United MLA. Jan writes us an email. Wasn't it the former BC Liberals that set up the semi-privatization of the former public service BC Ferries? And so this falls on their shoulders. This is also what the transportation minister says, that those costs have risen under what was the BC Liberal plan.
No, I challenge the minister on that directly. And listen, we never politicized BC Ferries. I think that we had strong leadership on BC Ferries at a time. And if you look at what they've done now, the chair of BC Ferries is Joy McPhail, a former NDP minister. And I can tell you that I don't think that Ms. McPhail has in-depth experience when it comes to the ferry systems worldwide. I think that we saw a dramatic lack of leadership over the summer when people were absolutely stranded and destitute by BC Ferries. And you couldn't find a CEO or an executive or a chairperson anywhere until, they were basically shamed getting in front of the camera. So I don't accept that.
Trevor Halford, thank you very much. We'll see how things go this weekend on the ferry service. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Trevor Halford is BC United's MLA for Surrey White Rock and the opposition critic for transportation and infrastructure. And we have one last email from Sandy, who writes, we travel frequently from the mainland to the southern Gulf Islands. The service has been reliable and pleasant. I wish it were the same on the Sunshine Coast and heading to and from Swartz Bay. Sandy, thanks for sharing your experience. You can email us to bctoday@cbc.ca. It's 12:32, 1:32 in the Mountain Time Zone. And thanks so much for joining us here on BC Today, CBC Radio 1, as well live streaming on cbc.ca/BC, on the CBC Gem app, and on YouTube. And coming up in our next half hour, our pets column is back, and we are going to touch in on the weather because this weekend is going to be nice and warm. You may be out with your pets. Well, how do you protect them from run-ins with coyotes? And as the weather turns, how do you protect them from the cold? Dr. Lauren Edelman will be back, veterinarian, to take your calls. That's coming up after the CBC News Update with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. Statistics Canada says 64,000 jobs were created across the country last month, but rapid population growth means the unemployment rate stayed steady. Economists say most jobs created in September were part-time positions. In BC, unemployment remains slightly below the national average. The NBA's Players Association and its members on the Toronto Raptors are donating $10,000 to fund striking support workers at Simon Fraser University. Raptors guard Garrett Temple says this is to help workers in their fight for a fair contract. The statement came hours before the Raptors hold an open practice at SFU's Burnaby campus this evening. And Highway 1 between Cache Creek and Spence's Bridge has reopened. It was shut down yesterday morning after a crash between two commercial vehicles. One of those vehicles caught on fire. Police say one of the drivers is still missing. They don't know if they are hurt or left the scene. And now the forecast on the north coast, a chance of showers this afternoon with a high of 15, highs up to 20 and clearing in the Peace. In the central interior, a mix of sun and cloud with a high of 18, highs reaching 21 with sunshine in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, sunny with a high of 20 degrees. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria and the Fraser Valley, sunny as well this afternoon with highs up to 24 inland. I'll have more local news at the top of the hour. Now back to Michelle with BC Today.
Rob, thank you very much. It's lunchtime.
Yes, it is.
I don't know, we're not eating right now, but have you ever had cereal for lunch?
Cereal for lunch. Well, actually, I was talking about this on the coast the other day.
Yeah?
I eat a lot of steel-cut oats, so sometimes I have that, not necessarily lunch, but mid-afternoon.
Very healthy, steel-cut oats.
But every time I make it at work, everyone says, why are you having steel-cut oats in the middle of the afternoon?
Because I like a healthy diet. Steel-cut oats, I don't know if I can get behind that. I like the sort of the semi-processed oats, I guess, because they're really gritty, aren't they? I know they're the best for you.
Oh, no, they're fantastic. They
Are
have
they
a great
fantastic?
sort of spongy texture. They're
Okay,
awesome.
maybe
Yeah.
I need to cook them or soak them for longer.
I do it in the rice cooker, yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, do you do it in the air fryer?
No, I haven't tried that. Maybe I should.
Hopefully people remember that you love your air fryer and that we've talked about
Oh, I
that.
do.
So you
Who
cook
doesn't?
it you cook it in the rice cooker?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just like rice.
Yes, I cook a lot of rice, Rob.
I cook a lot of rice.
I live in a rice household.
Yeah. I'm a huge rice fan.
It goes with so many Filipino foods. Okay, and how long in the rice cooker? I'm just going to take some notes.
Until it's cooked. It just turns off.
just turns off,
Come
right.
on, Michelle. That's the beauty
That's
of a
true.
rice cooker.
That is true.
Right?
Yeah.
It's almost as good as an air fryer.
I'm going to try that. I've never put anything
Cooks itself.
other than rice in my rice cooker. But
There you go.
I may
Yeah, my
try
buddy
that.
Chris, he gave me that tip.
Okay.
It's on the package of steel cut oats, so just follow the directions.
I need
Michelle.
to, yeah. Just read them, will you?
Yes.
I need to expand, I guess, my oatmeal palate.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Well, I have high cholesterol as well, so
Yeah.
apparently it's good for that.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Sure. Yeah. You bet.
Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. I think he was aiming to talk about cereal and we ended up talking about oatmeal. So there you go. Robert Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Welcome back. This is BC Today here on CBC Radio 1. We're also live streaming on CBC Gem, cbc.ca/BC, and on your CBC Listen app, CBC Gem app as well. Well, it is every second Friday. We do a pets column here on the show, and we love to get your questions, of course, your questions to our veterinarians and your stories about your beloved pets. And we get to do that once again this week. Our pets column is back. Dr. Lauren Edelman is here to take your calls and your questions. And she has a couple of topics to talk about as well as we, start that full transition from summer to fall. A couple of topics in mind. First, how to handle run-ins with coyotes. You may be heading out on a trail walk with your dog this weekend. It's going to be nice and sunny and warm. So let us know if you've had any run-ins. How do you avoid them? We'll get some tips as well from Dr. Edelman. And then with the cooler weather ahead, yes, after fall comes winter, we'll talk about cold weather care. So you can give us a call on keeping your pets warm. Give us a call on those two topics, or if you have any other questions, do call us now, 1-800-825-5950. 604-669-3733, and on your cell phone, pound 690. By email, it's bctoday@cbc.ca. And I'm joined now in studio by Dr. Lauren Edelman, co-founder of Senior Dog Vets. Hello, welcome back.
Thank you for having me back.
Thank you very much for joining us. I know you're a puppy parent yourself, right?
Definitely. Two dogs, yes.
Two dogs. So does this hit close to home for you? Going out and maybe seeing a coyote over yonder?
Absolutely. I mean, we see them in our neighborhood. I live just off Main Street.
I hear them at night.
yeah. So they're definitely in the city, but we spend a lot of time at places like Pacific Spirit,
Yes.
where we're more in their dens. So definitely it's something that I think applies to any dog parent, whether you're a city or, someone that likes to explore the wilderness.
Yeah, exactly. And what about cats? If they are let out?
Yeah. So cats, specifically indoor-outdoor or outdoor cats, are they're going to be your highest target for coyote prey. I myself had a cat that was a victim to a coyote. And, it's hard because most of the time you don't have closure in those cases. But, coyotes need to eat and they have their own pups that they're trying to feed. And so, if you're a cat, being an outdoor cat is probably the greatest risk factor for that.
Oh, dear. I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, thank you.
And so when you say the coyotes are very drawn to cats as prey, what about with dogs? Because aren't they closely related?
Yeah, so there is some relationship, but I mean, when we think about our domestic dogs, the little toy or teacup Pomeranian that's walking around the neighborhood is not exactly a wolf. So
they're not twins.
Despite what some TV commercials have you believe. So, they're more like a snack. Let's be real. Whether it's a coyote or an owl, these small dogs particularly are at risk, especially when you have a hungry wild animal that needs to potentially feed its own offspring.
Wow. And sadly, you mentioned what happened with your cat, but what kinds of injuries might dogs face?
Yeah, so it could be anything from, a quick bite. There was a couple dogs that were on the North Shore not too long ago that had a run-in with a coyote, and, one of them needed some stitches, to a fatal attack.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll take your pet and leave, which
Right.
obviously is even worse, but we definitely at the veterinary hospital see coyote victims that have punctures to their lungs and need multiple surgeries, and, they may not make it.
Wow. And so, what would be your advice then to avoid even getting to that point?
Well, the biggest advice is keep your pets on a leash, especially if you're in an area where there are coyotes, and that goes for cats too. Obviously, keep them inside. Most of the time, the coyotes are either defending themselves or they're trying to find a meal. And so if you happen to run into a coyote when you do have a dog on leash, I did this just the other day. I was walking both my little dogs and my baby with my husband, and sure enough, across the street, there was a coyote.
Oh, boy.
And the most important thing you can do is not run away. So you need to stand your ground. You need to, be big, keep eye contact, maybe make a loud noise, kind of almost an intimidating stance. But if you kind of scream and run away, that's when they're going to come after you. So, yeah, you just need to kind of be big.
Yeah. How do you avoid your dogs getting excited?
So that can be difficult. Obviously keep them on a leash because dogs often will get excited. You may not be able to control that, but if your dog's standing there and barking at them and they're on a leash, that might be enough in and of itself to to scare the animal away. Whereas if your dog runs up to it and then runs away, it's just going to follow you.
That's sending a message for sure. Yeah, let's take some calls now asking you if you've had any run-ins with your pets with coyotes, and what did you do? What was the result of that? And if you want some questions answered as well, you can call us. And we're also going to talk about keeping your pets warm as we head into colder weather. Your questions to Dr. Lauren Edelman, co-founder of Senior Dog Vets. Our numbers again, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, on your cell phone, pound 690. And Kelly is calling us from Kelowna with 2 cats. Or you have 2 cats. I don't know if the cats are on the line with you, Kelly.
Cats are not on the line with me right now, no.
Well, tell us about them, and what's your question?
I have 2, I have 3 Sphinx cats. 2 of them are littermate males. They're 4.5 years old, fixed, and been best of friends. We talk about how lovely they are all the time. Yesterday, in the garage, a box fell, something like that, and one of my males got very afraid or territorial and attacked his brother. He attacked him very bad. He bit him quite a few times in the back part of his body. And, of course, there was a bunch of spray and pooping everywhere. I separated them, and then I tried to bring them together at the end of the day, and the same thing happened again. I'm so worried. I don't know how to, reintroduce them, or if I should medicate them, or what I should do.
Wow. You sound so distressed, and that is distressing. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry that happened to you. That is super stressful. And that's not a very common circumstance for it to happen again. I understand that if one of your cats got spooked when the box fell and they kind of redirected, but the fact that you tried, later to put them back together and the same thing happened, obviously there's some sort of association with, the other cat. And so I would start by, just giving some time for them to be kept apart, because as we say, time heals all wounds. Sometimes just having it be more of a distant memory can be helpful. You might want to, take something that smells like the victim cat and bring it to the other cat, and then vice versa, just so they kind of reintroduce their smells to each other, rather than, just the physicality of them being in the same room. And then you just want to create a lot of positive association. So if your bully cat, we'll call him, has a favorite food or anything like that, maybe include that in the reintroduction. If it's very bad, then you may want to speak to a behaviorist about it. There's also other products that you can use to help minimize stress. I don't know if you've ever heard of Feel Away products.
I have 3 of the diffusers.
Okay.
What are those?
And then I also bought the spray.
Okay, good.
And I'm not sure like where exactly to spray it. The other thing that I was thinking about doing, because they're Sphynx cats, they have no hair, and so to completely bath them, and then
I think a bath is a great idea. And yes, so Feel Away is basically this product. It is a synthetic version of the maternal hormone that cats create. And so it's a calming pheromone. And it's been shown to, we use it at the vet hospital. Like if I have an angry cat, I'll be like,
Right.
all over myself. But yeah, I would just spray honestly everywhere. You can't really overdo it with Feel Away unless you have like an asthmatic cat. Don't spray it when they're physically in the room. But just spray it all around them. You know, you want to make sure you just have a lot of positive enrichment going on.
Yeah. How does that sound to you, Kelly? I know you're, yeah.
it's really hard. Their little sister, we have a little girl who isn't their mate, but she is a sibling, and she's been so worried.
Oh.
So I'm really hoping that I can bring my little family back together.
I think they will. I think it just needs a little bit of time.
Yeah. It sounds.
Could you recommend, like, would it be helpful to medicate them to do some, like, Ativan or gabapentin? And then how long should I keep them apart right now? They're segregated.
Yeah, I think gabapentin, I mean, if you already have that prescription, or you can go see your vet, but gabapentin is kind of an anti-anxiety med that we use a lot in cats. I think that would be a great idea. You could medicate, obviously, the one that's more of the instigator. You don't want to overdo it, though, because you also don't want them to feel like their defenses aren't there. But I think, continuing that for maybe a week and keeping them apart, if it happened, maybe just keep them apart for another day and then, try again tonight or tomorrow.
Okay. Kelly.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, some more time. I hope that works out for you. And yes, that you can bring your family back together. That is certainly distressing.
Great timing for you to be on the air today. Thank you so much for your reassurance.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I hope you're reassured. Kelly, thank you very much for the call. I'm glad you called. That's Kelly joining us from Kelowna. And if you have a question for Dr. Edelman, you can give us a call. If you have a tale, a story to tell about an encounter with a coyote, as she has some advice as well to share on that with your pets, and how to protect our pets from the cold. Those are the topics that she's talking about today. But if you have other questions, call us to 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. And so on to, looking ahead to the colder weather. People don't necessarily stop going out with their dogs, right? So what is the risk, first of all, when the weather gets cooler?
Yeah, and I think right now you look outside, it's a sunny day.
No, not happening.
But the mornings and nights are still quite chilly.
Yeah.
And so I think the biggest thing to realize is that a lot of people have the misconception dogs have fur, they're wearing fur coats, they're not susceptible to the cold. I mean, that's true for certain dogs, like the Alaskan breeds, like Malamutes or Huskies that have these thick undercoats. But for the majority of dogs, they're susceptible just like we are. And so, how susceptible you are to the cold depends on a number of factors. Your age, so senior or geriatric pets are going to be more susceptible to the cold. Health status, so, dogs that are diabetic or have heart disease, are same with cats, are going to be more susceptible to the cold. And then, the big things are things like arthritis. Just like with people, the cold not only activates that, but when it starts to get icy, they're going to be the ones that are going to be more likely to potentially slip and fall, things like that.
Okay.
So,
well, you can't miss that. But otherwise, what are the signs that your dog is getting too cold? What should you look out for?
So just like people, dogs will shiver. You can feel them. So a good place to feel is always kind of like the nose or the ear tips, the extremities. If they feel cold there, they're probably cold. Other signs would be, unwillingness to go outside, wanting to come back home. And there's so many products available now to keep your pets warm. If your dog will wear clothing, a sweater or a jacket's a great idea. Booties, there's even booties out there. My dogs won't wear booties.
No, but they're so cute.
Yeah, they are very cute. But there's lots of ways. And if they won't, just, taking them outside when it's the warmest time of day, or, getting them activity in another way. So if it's really, really cold outside and your pet won't wear those things that help keep them warm, finding a place where they can have indoor activity. There's indoor activity centers around Vancouver, swimming pools, etc.
Okay. Swimming pools. Where can you go for that?
There's I think a few around Vancouver. The one that comes to mind is like Aquapaws, but it's literally a swimming pool for dogs.
Oh, wow. I hadn't heard that. That's great. Let's take another call now. We're asking you for your questions about pet care and your thoughts as well, and your stories and experiences when it comes to your encounters with coyotes when you've been out with your pets. How did that turn out? What do you want to know about protecting them? And talking about cold as well. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Let's head to the island now. And Diana is on the line from Comox. Hi, Diana.
Hello.
Thanks for calling. And what's your question or your story?
Yeah, I have a little Chihuahua cross, so she's about 9 pounds. And we don't have coyotes here, but we have eagles. And I also take her off leash to a lot of places where there's lots of big dogs. And I've never had her attacked, just to be clear, but I bought a coyote vest. And if you Google coyote vest, it's a Kevlar puncture-proof little outfit you can put on them with spikes. So it has spikes, and it has a big set of eyes that you can add on that are huge, that face straight up. So your dog is protected from bites. And it also, so having taken her wearing that out amongst big dogs, it causes them to stop and look.
Wow.
Yeah, it's called Coyote Vest. It's an American company, and when I dealt with them, they were so great to deal with. They had recommendations. They took a real interest in it. And so she once was playing with a husky kind of Malamute pit bull that was very friendly, and it started to get rough, and it tried to mouth her. And it literally tried to mouth her, gave a little yelp, and backed off.
Wow, from that.
Yeah. I've definitely heard of those. There's actually, I know you mentioned that one's an American company. If you're more into, Canadian made or local, there is a company, I think it might even be based out of BC, but correct me if I'm wrong. It's called like Predator Wear or Predator Beware, something of the sort.
Yeah.
And they have like an Instagram page and everything, and they make these. And I believe they started making them a couple summers ago when there was a lot of the coyote attacks in Stanley Park.
Right. Yeah, we were thinking about that. And so to be clear, Diana, this is not for keeping your Chihuahua warm. This is to protect against
Yeah, this is strictly protected from predators, a different coat for cold days, but it's amazing and it allows me to relax around her.
I bet.
I can just chill because she invites large dogs to play with her, and then it can be quite nerve-wracking to watch. But they really will not bite her when she has this on.
Wow. Yeah, and so small too, right? As you were saying earlier, that would be like dinner for...
Exactly, or a snack. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm glad that you are reassured, and that's a great tip, Diana. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Enjoy your weekend. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
You too. Thanks.
Tasha is calling us next from Kamloops. Hi, Tasha.
Hi, thanks. Listen, I've got a great story to tell here. My dog is a rescue from Mexico. Her name is Suertuda, which means lucky. And she was lucky because she was found lying by the side of a road, hit by a car.
Oh, boy.
And but she was lucky that somebody found her and got her into care. And she had dislocated her right front elbow. So when she was in the vet in Mexico, they put her in a half body cast, and but they never put the elbow back in place. Anyway, long story short, years later, she's got a very arthritic elbow, but it doesn't stop her from running and playing. She's actually caught squirrels. I mean, she's an amazing dog, and we're also a therapy dog team, which is she's got a great disposition, but the arthritis has been getting worse. Well, just a few months ago, there was a new medication, I'm sure the doctor knows, called Librela, which was approved, and it's an injectable monoclonal antibody. And my dog has had it twice now, and she's like a puppy. She's moving so much more easily, and she's playing longer. I mean, the change is remarkable.
Wow.
And I'm really happy for her because she's about 7 now, and I know the rest of her life will be much better than it was in terms of arthritic pain. So I just want to share that with listeners. Librela is, at least for my dog, and I've heard for other animals, cats and dogs, is really doing wonders. It's not a steroid and it's not an anti-inflammatory. She's tolerating it really well, and it's definitely turned her life around.
Wow. Living up to her name, eh, Tasha?
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks so much. Lovely to hear. Tasha in Kamloops. Yes, I think you talked about Librela last time too.
Yeah, amazing drug. I'm glad she brought that up. It's a lot of people don't know about it. There's a lot of things out there with claims to help with arthritis, but this is truly, it's like veterinarians are so excited about it.
Wow. Well, it sounds like it certainly made a difference for her rescue dog too. Now, we've been talking about coyote attacks, but of course, bears as well. And we have an email here. I think we have another caller, though, as well on the line. Liz, are you able to be quick? We just have a couple of minutes left, but I know you have an important question.
Yeah, I'll try and be quick. I've been fostering dogs from Mexico, and I have one at the moment that I've had for 8 weeks now, so we're quite attached. It's a puppy. It's a 7-month-old puppy, but he is going to have to be adopted because I can't keep him. And I'm just trying to think of a way to transition him so he doesn't feel like he's been yet again abandoned because he used to be a street dog. How can I transition him to his new family when it does happen?
I think just, making sure that they come for a visit, that he's familiar with them before he actually moves into the new home is a good idea. That way it's, I think we also underestimate their ability when it comes to fostering. He's going to love you, and then he's going to love his new family, and he's going to be just as excited to be there. So I think that's a guilt that maybe we feel, but he's going to be happy. He's a puppy. He's, resilient.
I hope that's reassuring for you, Liz. Thank you so much for the call. I'm glad we got you into, because that's, I'm sure, something that people ask about all the time, too. One last email from Michelle, who writes, on our farm on the edge of the wilderness, our dogs do double duty as pet and wildlife guards. Last spring, our dogs were on their early morning walk, and after being let out, one is a Heinz 57 and another is a Kendall Lab Cross, they came upon a young 3-year-old grizzly bear very close to our house beside the pond. Both amazingly came away with only minor injuries. And the Kengal had to go to the vet as he ended up with pneumonia from the water. But we see grizzly bears here all the time. Our dogs show them the respect they deserve and only bark, not chase. As you were saying, make those sounds as well. Certainly important to be bear aware for humans and dogs too.
I think dogs are usually the culprits in human attacks from bears, off-leash dogs. So I'm glad your dogs are bear aware, but definitely, dogs barking and running up to a bear and then running away. Yeah. That's a surefire way to set that bear off.
Same advice for that. Always such a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Lauren Edelman, co-founder of Senior Dog Vets. That's it for our show today. My thanks to our callers and our team, Alan Regan, Rachel Adams, George Baker, Melody Jacobson, Mashid Hadi, Mel Carter, Mike Hillman, Greg Kisser, and Mark Fairfield. I'm Michelle Eliot. You have a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend. We'll be back on Tuesday.